I titled my call to worship, My Unimagined Life. In 1965, as a high school senior, trying to imagine where life would take me, I spent long minutes at a time staring out a second-story bedroom window, my mind not registering what was in front of my eyes. Instead of appreciating the view, a peaceful tree-lined creek and an orchard across from it, my mind wandered far, far away. At times, for example, I saw myself driving across the country in a Volkswagen camper van, all alone, seeking new adventures and meeting people, as did John Steinbeck in his newest novel, Travels with Charlie. But to accomplish what along the way? I didn't know. I had no noble purpose or driving ambition to take me into the long-term future. The short-term goal was to attend college and pursue a degree in journalism, get myself prepared for a career, become a self-sufficient wage earner, be a responsible adult. I went to college as planned, but only for 2 years. It seemed I was not yet ready to find my own way. I was sidetracked by the attentions of a young man and soon found myself married, no longer encouraged to seek my own identity or career. The river of life swept me along and I floated on it like a twig, riding the current, dashing against rocks, swirling in eddies, and occasionally resting in shallow pools along the way. Not until 1976 did I climb out of the river of a somewhat abusive marriage to take first steps toward independence and a stronger self-image. I was truly a late bloomer. That one action in 1976, the act of enlisting in the Air National Guard, was a significant life-changing event for me. It was the first step into a formal training environment where I would be encouraged to obtain measurable skills, meet achievable goals, and gain recognition for jobs well done. Another fortunate part of my 30+ years in the military was the fact that it wasn't full-time, or at least until the last 10. Training and drills happened only 1 weekend a month and 2 other weeks of the year. I could use newly learned skills in the civilian job world and adapt them to different situations as needed. Flexibility and adaptability were key. So was creativity. All those abilities shaped the rest of my working life and often gave me a sense of satisfaction. Of course, work is not the only thing in life. There was no training program to help me with personal relationships. When Tom and I married in 1995, it was the third try for both of us. We both had to grow and change emotionally through 2 other marriages before this one could have a chance at success. In the past 27 years, we made many tiny habit changes to keep this one going. So, how did my unimagined life turn out? Was my journey of small and large and sometimes failed goals good enough? My answer is yes. Do I need to compare my journey with yours? No. Regardless of how I got here or how you got here, we are in the same loving church community, making a difference in our lives for each other and those in the broader world. Attempting to change habits and attain goals, no matter how small, are more than worthwhile actions. They are an important part of life. Come, let us continue to take steps together towards being our better selves.
Today, I get to share with you Miss Rumfius, one of our family's favorites. We actually gifted this story to my oldest daughter when she was in first grade as part of our Age of Reason ritual, because it contains so many wonderful lessons that we hope she'd carry with her through life. The lupine lady lives in a small house overlooking the sea. In between the rocks around her house grew blue and purple and rose-colored flowers. The lupine lady is little and old, but she's not always been that way. I know she is my great aunt, and she told me so. Once upon a time, she was a little girl named Alice who lived in a city by the sea. From the front stoop, she could see the wharves and bristling mass of tall ships. Many years ago, her grandfather had come to America on a large sailing ship. Now, he worked in a shop at the bottom of the house, making figureheads for the prows of ships and carving them out of wood to put in the front of stores. For Alice's grandfather was an artist. He painted pictures too of sailing ships and places across the sea. And when he was very busy, Alice helped him put in the skies. In the evening, Alice sat on her grandfather's knee and listened to his stories of faraway places. When he had finished, Alice would say, "When I grow up, I too will go to faraway places. And when I grow old, I too will live beside the sea." "Well, that is all very well, little Alice," said her grandfather, "but there is a third thing you must do." "What is that?" asked Alice. "You must do something to make the world more beautiful," said her grandfather. "All right," said Alice, but she did not know what that could be. In the meantime, Alice got up and washed her face and ate porridge for breakfast. She went to school and came home and did her homework. And pretty soon, wouldn't you know, she was a grown-up. Then my great Aunt Alice set out to do the 3 things she had told her grandfather she was going to do. She left home and went to live in another city, far from the sea and the salt air. There she worked in a library, dusting books and keeping them from getting mixed up and helping people find the ones they wanted. Some of the books told her about faraway places. People now called her Miss Rumphius. Sometimes she went to the conservatory in the middle of the park. When she stepped inside on a wintry day, the warm, moist air wrapped itself around her, and the sweet smell of jasmine filled her nose. "This is almost like a tropical isle," said Miss Rumphius, "but not quite." So Miss Rumphius went to a real tropical island where people kept cockatoos and monkeys as pets. She walked on long beaches, picking up beautiful shells, and one day she met the Babaraja, king of a fishing village. "You must be tired," he said. "Come into my house and rest." So Miss Rumphius went in and met the Babaraja's wife. The Babaraja himself fetched a green coconut and cut a slice off the top so Miss Rumphius could drink the coconut water inside. Before she left, the Babaraja gave her a beautiful mother of pearl shell on which she had painted a bird of paradise and the words, "You will always remain in my heart." "You will always remain in mine too," said Miss Rumphius. My great aunt, Miss Alice Rumphius, climbed tall mountains where the snow never melted. She went through jungles and across deserts. She saw lions playing and kangaroos jumping, and everywhere she made friends she would never forget. Finally, she came to the land of the lotus eaters, and there, getting off a camel, she hurt her back. "What a foolish thing to do," said Miss Rumphius. "Well, I have certainly seen faraway places. Maybe it is time to find my place by the sea." And it was. And she did. From the porch of her new house, Miss Rumphius watched the sun come up. She watched it cross the heavens and sparkle on the water. And she saw it set in glory in the evening. She started a little garden among the rocks that surrounded her little house, and she planted a few flower seeds in the stony ground. Miss Rumphius was almost perfectly happy. "But there is still one more thing I have to do," she said. "I have to do something to make the world more beautiful." "But what? The world already is pretty nice," she thought, looking out over the ocean. From the porch of her new house, Miss Rumphius watched the sun come up. She watched it cross the heavens and sparkle on the water. And she saw it set in glory in the evening. She started a little garden among the rocks that surrounded her little house, and she planted a few flower seeds in the stony ground. Miss Rumphius was almost perfectly happy. "But there is still one more thing I have to do," she said. "I have to do something to make the world more beautiful." "But what? The world already is pretty nice," she thought, looking out over the ocean. The next spring, Miss Rumphius was not very well. Her back was bothering her again, and she had to stay in bed most of the time. The flowers she had planted the summer before had come up and bloomed in spite of the stony ground. She could see them from her bedroom window, blue and purple and rose-colored. "Lupines," said Miss Rumphius with satisfaction. "I have always loved lupines the best. I wish I could plant more seeds this summer so that I could have still more flowers next year." But she was not able to. After a hard winter came spring, and Miss Rumphius was feeling much better. Now she could take walks again. And one afternoon, she started to go up and over the hill where she had not been in a long time. "I don't believe my eyes," she cried when she got to the top. For there on the other side of the hill was a large patch of blue and purple and rose-colored lupines. "It was the wind," she said as she knelt in delight. "It was the wind that brought the seeds from my garden here, and the birds. The birds must have helped." Then Miss Rumphius had a wonderful idea. She hurried home and got out her seed catalogs. She sent off to the very best seed house for 5 bushels of lupine seed. All that summer, Miss Rumphius, her pockets full of seeds, wandered over fields and headlands sowing lupines. She scattered seeds along the highways and down the country lanes. She flung handfuls of them around the schoolhouse and back of the church. She tossed them into hollows along stone walls. Her back didn't hurt anymore at all. Now, some people called her that crazy old lady. The next spring, there were lupines everywhere. Fields and hillsides were covered with blue and purple and rose-colored flowers. They bloomed along the highways and down the lanes. Bright patches lay around the schoolhouse and back of the church. Down in the hollows and along the stone walls grew the beautiful flowers. Miss Rumphius had done the third most difficult thing of all. My great aunt Alice, Miss Rumphius, is very old now. Her hair is very white. Every year there are more and more lupines. Now they call her the Lupine Lady. Sometimes my friends stand with me outside her gate, curious to see the old lady who planted the fields of lupines. When she invites us in, they come slowly. They think she is the oldest woman in the world, and often she tells us stories of faraway places. When I grow up, I tell her, I too will go see faraway places and come home to live by the sea. That is all very well, little Alice, says my aunt, but there is a third thing you must do. What is that, I ask? Well, you must do something to make the world more beautiful. All right, I say, but I'm not quite sure what that can be. And that is the story of Miss Rumphius.
Our reading is titled Found While Lost by Eric Martinez Wesley. The beauty of the world is the mouth of a labyrinth, writes Simone Weil. We would be foolish not to follow its call. And so we enter the labyrinth, lured by the whiff of a dream still in the making, the possibility of a new relationship, the promise of a new career, the potential for a new beginning. We can never be sure what we will find once inside, but this much is certain: there will be times when the beauty of the world, and with it the entrance to the labyrinth, unexpectedly disappear. Some relationships will disintegrate, some careers will dissatisfy, some beginnings will disappoint. Unable to find the labyrinth's opening, we often find ourselves in frantic search of an escape, fumbling for the next step, tiring ourselves out in the process. Disheartened, dispirited, we feel disoriented, we get lost. The question is not whether we will get lost in life, but rather how we will move through it. Will we dwell on everything we have lost? Or will we focus instead on everything that we have yet to find? As it happens, there is much that awaits us in our lostness, much to be excavated, examined, even exalted. And not yet knowing what will be, we are afforded the opportunity to appreciate what already is. The things that are hiding in plain sight. A frayed relationship, for example, may reveal our deeper needs. An unfulfilling career may motivate us to seek out a mentor. A misstart or a misstep may remind us all of our fragile humanity. It may claw open our hearts and sensitize us to the suffering of others. When lost, perhaps the greatest question we can ask ourselves is this: how will we be found? Once the time is ripe, the stars align and the way begins to open. Will we be ready to embrace the mystery anew? Will we choose to trust anew, to risk anew, to hope anew? Will we allow ourselves to yet again be drawn in, swept up, taken over by the magic that makes life worth living? The words of Simone Weil: for if we do not lose courage, if we go on walking, it is absolutely certain that we will finally arrive at the center of the labyrinth. And there, life is waiting. I know someone, I'm going to give her the pseudonym of Rigby. She likes to talk quite a lot, but one of her favorite subjects of conversation is sharing all of the plans she has for how she's going to improve her life, how she's going to improve her marriage and her intimate life, how she's going to make more money by changing jobs or getting a side hustle, how she's going to eat better and improve her health, et cetera, et cetera. You get the idea. Every time you see her, she runs down a full list of all of her goals and the steps and schemes that she has for how she's going to achieve them. In the more than decade and a half or so since I've known Rigby, I've seen her make two big changes. One was to buy a super special edition pickup truck that couldn't have been cheap. And the other was to quit her full-time job with benefits with the government and instead become a self-employed travel agent, a real growth industry in the 21st century. But beyond those two sort of big visible goals, very little else has changed in Rigby's life. She still ruins her finances with compulsive shopping, which forces her husband to work overtime, which, as you imagine, doesn't add to marital bliss. Her marriage is still less than happy for them both. She still takes too many vacations, though now she calls them research. She still eats too much fast food. You get the idea. And while Rigby's constant chatter about her goals is sometimes exhausting, I do at the same time have empathy for her. She has some very good reasons on why she has psychological struggles in her adulthood. And it's always difficult to see someone unhappy in their life, but seemingly unable to redirect it. She keeps circling back to the same place and the same issues over and over again. From the outside looking in on Rigby's life, it seems she's making a number of poor decisions and trying to achieve the goals that she has. So this is a journey I want to take all of us on today. What are some of the pitfalls in achieving our life goals? What are the things we can do to make our life goals more successful? Now, when I say life goals, I'm not solely referring to what 20-somethings might be thinking about when they're looking at a long span of time. Life goals could have chronological depth, but not necessarily. No matter our age or our class or our race and all of those things, we all have goals and dreams at all phases of our life. Now, to be sure, the nature of the goals, those are going to change dramatically at different stages of life. But today, I'm not so much interested in the content of our goals. What I want us to consider together is what are the strategies that we can employ to achieve those life goals. So for our purposes today, let's consider life goals to be things that we want to achieve or experience, the things we might wish to change about ourselves, ways we might want to grow our happiness, or thirdly, the kind of impact and legacy that we want to have on humanity and the earth. So another way we could put these three goals is life goals are the things that make life satisfying and fulfilling. They're the things that give us meaning and purpose, that help us wrestle with big questions. It's what teaches us what it means to be human. And regardless of our stage of life, we all have them. We all have life goals. And why is that? Why are we all inclined to continually make significant goals? Well, one reason is that growth is part of being human. Most of us are interested in being a better version of ourselves tomorrow than we are today. Second reason we're constantly generating goals is that the universe is not static. We all have to constantly respond and adapt to the changing conditions around us. We can't create a version of ourselves at age 18 and then travel through the rest of life exactly the same for the rest of our days. As we and all of the things around us change, we create new dreams and new goals to adapt to those various unfolding realities. And each life goal then begins a new journey. And each of those journeys has a lifespan of its own. For Rigby, her life goals had the lifespan of a mayfly. Well, what can we do to give our life goals a more proper lifespan to help them survive until they reach fruition? Well, I've got some tips for us on how we can move life goals from ideas to realities. Tip number one, act, and act immediately. I have a quote from media consultant Sergey Trevino on this. He wrote, "Thinking big is great and essential for making any progress in life. But if the thought is not followed by immediate action, it becomes first a wish, and then after some time, another source of frustration in your life. Another, I could, I should, I didn't." Rigby is always scheming. And if you were meeting her for the first time, you'd probably be totally impressed by the volume of things that she's constantly thinking about and how many ideas she has about what she can do. But when you meet her for the second, fifth, 20th time, you'll come to appreciate that you keep having the same conversation over and over again. She just keeps circling back to the same stuff time after time. Putting more and more words onto a goal is kind of like trying to get your car out of the mud by pushing the accelerator over and over again. Well, I got a good feeling about this next one. Right? We all do that. We keep pushing the accelerator, but it doesn't make the car get out of the mud, does it? It makes a lot of noise. It makes us feel good, like we're actually doing something, but in reality, we're not doing a thing, right? It's just noise. The lone action of creating a scheme, having an idea, in fact, that's not a journey. It doesn't move us ahead. That's simply a starting place. So we need to act, and we need to act immediately. But not only do we need to act, tip number two, when we're ready to act, that first step needs to be something sensible and achievable. I had a friend in my college years. I went over to his house one time, and he had a bunch of magazine pictures taped to his wall. And I said, "Well, what's up with the pictures on the wall?" It was, a speedboat and a fancy car and a big house. They were all material things. So I said, "Well, why'd you put those magazine pictures on your wall?" He said, "Oh, I went to a seminar from a guy who got rich quick. And this is how you do it. You visualize how you're going to spend your millions, and then you put those images around so that way you look at them every day and you know what your goals are." Well, how do you get from magazine pictures to millionaire? What are the steps? There's nothing there to act on. I mean, that get rich quick guy is just selling a dream that, hey, I did it, you can too. What I thought to say to this friend, but I didn't say it, I just thought it, was that maybe withdrawing from school twice and not having a job longer than a year or two might be playing a bigger role in your economic future than whether or not you have the right pictures taped on your wall. Now, I can totally appreciate the power of visualization, but you need some steps on how to get there. And when we create first steps that are sensible and achievable, that helps to give us a sense of accomplishment and build our confidence. Achieving that first step makes it easier then to map out further steps. The task begins to look less daunting. If you go on a religious pilgrimage, there's a reason why it has stations. You break it down to make it easier to travel. Education works the same way. Life journeys, life goals are always easier when we break them down into achievable pieces rather than stare down the whole thing from start to finish. I suspect that all of us probably have experience in breaking down big goals into smaller stages. That is a rather intuitive thing to do. Well, if it's intuitive and perhaps even somewhat obvious, then why don't we do better at reaching those goals sometimes? Here's where many of us make a mistake, I think, in moving towards our goals and in selecting that first step. Oftentimes, when we make that step, we make one that is inauthentic. So this is my third tip. Make sure that the steps that we select are authentic ones for us. Let me give you a personal example. Let's say I set the life goal of getting more exercise, and I probably should set that as a life goal. Okay, so that's my goal. If I say to myself, okay, step one, buy a gym membership. I've already sabotaged myself. Machines at the gym make me feel like a little hamster on a wheel. I'm bored within seconds, and talking myself into going back a second time, it ain't gonna happen. So where am I gonna end up? Well, not at the gym. I'm gonna end up at the same place again, so at the starting point, because I folded self-sabotage into the goal by picking a step that was totally inauthentic. If I want to fulfill that goal, I shouldn't take a phony first step. I know that's phony. I could tell myself, oh, well, this time will be different. Or it's my New Year's resolution, so surely I'll do it this time. I know myself better than that. I'm not going to go do those machines at the gym. I hate it. So if I want accomplishment, I should set a calendar of nature walking or get a walking buddy or join a tennis league. Those are all forms of physical activity that I like. That's authentic and genuine, and a first step I'm going to accomplish, as opposed to one that just makes me feel good, like I am accomplishing something when I'm not. Tip number 4 is be flexible and adaptable. There's always a path to get to where you want to go. But the best path generally builds itself as we proceed. Have you ever met someone who decided at a very young age where they were going to go to college, what their major was going to be, at what age they would marry, at what age they'd buy a house, at what age they'd have a kid, and they got everything all mapped out? I used to meet, when I taught in college years ago, I used to meet quite a few young people who at age 22 or 23 were already feeling like they were old hags because they weren't married. Like, what's wrong with me? No doubt Southern culture had been influencing them, right, in pressuring them to marry young. But there's simply way too many variables beyond our control to think about our future with that level of rigidity. Rigid plans are often going to lead to frustration and disappointment because we're not often going to be able to meet those goals because there's so many things that are outside of our control. So those sorts of goals generally do not come to pass. And it's not because of what we did or didn't do along the way. They often fail to reach reality because that level of rigidity built into the goal leaves us unable to adapt and bend as life brings what it does. Here is my central takeaway for the day. We all need to be mindful of the various markers and steps that we create in our journeys towards our life goals. The steps that we take, the things that will give us a sense of accomplishment, the things that help fuel us to the next step or the next goal, all of that needs to come from within. They need to be authentic and genuine to ourselves. We can't adopt someone else's goals, but we also can't adopt someone else's steps and milestones either. We also have to be mindful of the various pressures and narratives from the wider culture. We face many pressures all the time telling us who or what to be, but our paths each need to be unique because so are we. Now, there's nothing wrong with borrowing wisdom and tips from others who have had a similar goal or a similar journey. In fact, that's just wise. It could perhaps be helpful or even vital to our own journey. But what is not wise is to compare ourselves to others or to gauge our sense of progress in comparison to others, because we're all working with different personal resources. Someone's always going to do something faster or better than we might. And guess what? That's not a reflection on us, because we're not them. They're doing the thing as they're able to do the thing. We're doing the thing as we're able to do the thing. Of course, the paths are different. The people involved are different. So just because someone else battled depression or addiction in a particular way, or repaired a relationship or achieved a new career, doesn't mean that the steps that they took to travel that journey will make any sense or work for us. That's their journey. Two goals may have the same destination, but the journey it takes to get there must be our own. Only we know what steps will work for us, how many steps it may take, how quickly we'll move to each of those steps, and so on. That journey is unique. So let me close by repeating my tips today. Act. Choose an authentic and achievable, choose an achievable first step. The third is to be authentic and genuine in the steps that we're selecting. And then fourthly, be flexible and adaptable. And it is my wish that each and every one of us meets with much success and greater success in all the life goals we may have.